Hello, beautiful beings, and welcome to the podcast episode of today. This is a Headnoise episode. We are punching through some fucking great questions. I'm recording 2 Headnoise episodes in a row, and I just got off last week's Headnoise, whatever, if you listen to it. And I'm feeling hot and fiery, and I'm getting emotionally invested in your stories. And so I'm just going to roll straight into the next episode because I'm in the zone. So I'm not going to give you much of a life update. Also, because I am on maternity leave while you're listening to this. So there will be a lot that's actually happening in my life, but I'm yet to experience it by the time you listen to this episode. So it's not going to really be a relevant life update. I just kind of want to dive straight in to these questions. So let's do it. Hi, Alexis. I'm currently in later years of high school and I'm struggling with friends. Not that I don't have any. I would honestly consider myself popular as I'm very friendly with loads of people, but I feel like I have no real friends, if you get me. Like everyone seems to have their best friend or their boyfriend/girlfriend or their go-to person that they spend majority of time outside of school with. But I honestly feel like once I'm outside of school, I have no one. And I live in a regional town, so there isn't many options in terms of friends until I leave high school. I don't want a romantic relationship, but what are some steps I can take to get rid of or counteract this loneliness feeling? Thank you, and thanks a lot for the podcast. This is a really, really good question. And one thing that I will say to you is when you leave high school, you said the later years of high school, you might still have, and I'm going to talk about ways that you can get closer with people. So that aside. But one thing that is going to be a massive eye-opener is that when you leave high school, your perspective on friendship kind of gets broadened. It's a bit of an eye-opening experience because in high school, you're kind of forced to be in this cohort of people day in, day out. And so you foster friendships in that circle based on the fact that you all live in the same town and you're all roughly the same age and then you're lumped in this group together. And then you leave high school and you either get a job, you leave your town, you might go to university or TAFE or whatever it is that you do, but you leave and you start expanding on your life and you have experiences that you probably never even imagined that you would have and all these things. And you start meeting people that are way more aligned with you based on the choices that you make. A lot of people that you meet, in your jobs as a young adult or university is a huge one. You start being like, whoa, there are many people that they were massive loners in high school, but then they get out of high school and all of a sudden they've got all these friends that they're really connected with and super close with that they're going to travel with, this and that, because you move out of this kind of forced environment where you have to see each other every single day and then you get pulled out. Another thing is a lot of people who have these best friends forever in high school, when they leave, they realize actually, maybe we didn't have that much in common because we're not mutually putting in the effort to see each other as often as we thought we would. We just thought that we were so close because we saw each other every day. But the reason we saw each other every day is because we had no choice, right? It's not because it's not effort that we've put into it. A lot of these friendships are just effortless friendships. And then the real test is when you then have to say, how much effort am I putting outside of an environment where I have to be here regardless of the friendship or not, okay? So that's one thing that you will realize, and it will be quite a refreshing experience for you because you are going to find your people, I can guarantee you that. And maybe your people were just never in high school. Maybe your people were just never in the town that you live in, and it's going to be a year or two before you have those real, real deep connections. However, when it comes to what you're going through, because you're not a loner, you have a lot of friends, you're quite popular, people like you, you're very friendly. You seem to have no problem socializing, which makes it easier for you than for maybe some other people. But you're saying you feel like you have no real friends because everyone's got their go-to person or whatever. So when people have their go-to person, it's not like there's a limit to I've only got my one best friend, I can't have another close friend. Don't let the fact that someone has a really close friend stop you from trying to get close with them. Don't let the fact that these 2 girls are really, really close together make you think, oh, well, that's off the cards for me. I now can't get closer with them. Try and expand, say in your group of friends there are these 2 girls that are absolutely best friends. Why not think, well, I want to get close with both of those girls. I'd love to get close with both those girls. What can I do to actually initiate things that would get me closer with them? I don't have to hack into their friendship and like steal a friend away from the other. I don't have to compete. It's not about competing. It's not about thinking it's them or me. Because when it comes to friendships, more is more, in my opinion, if they're quality friendships, okay? Like, it's not about quantity over quality. But when it comes to quality, if I can have another great friend enter my life, of course I'm going to welcome that coming into my life. So a lot of people, when they find their person, they just get very complacent with trying to socialize with other people, especially in high school, because you see them every day. And therefore, there is no real need of like, yeah, I've got this really close friend, but I only see her once a fortnight. Instead, you can kind of think, in high school, you're like, oh, it's just so easy. It's my number one person. It's whatever. But it's not that they're not interested in more friends. They just don't need to put themselves out there to make deeper connections with other people because they've already got that deep connection. That's already being satisfied. But if you were to reach out and say, hey, let's do something one-on-one, let's do this, or let's do something you two girls and myself, I want to do this, whatever, the likelihood of them saying yes is very high, especially because you're liked by many people. It's not like you're an absolute stranger and you're trying to make friends out of thin air. You already have that, level of popularity where people do like you. They like your presence. They like your energy. So unfortunately, it's going to have to come from you to be initiating these catch-ups or these hangouts outside of school, to do things. Invite them to do something, invite them over, invite them for whatever it is. And you'll see that for the most part, people are receptive to that. They're just complacent because they've already got that close person. And then you'll find that the more you do this, the easier it is to start building deeper connections. And once these friends feel like, oh, fuck, that was a really good day, that was a really good connection, then they will take initiative and they will start initiating things as well with you. Okay, but it has to come from you first because, like you said, they've each got their own person. So they're probably going to be lazy about it. But very good question. And yeah, when you leave high school, I think you'll be very, very pleasantly surprised with the experience. All right. Next question. Hi, Alexis. First, I wanted to say thank you for everything that you do. I've been listening to you since 2020. This is like an OG bean. As I started becoming an adult, you have helped me in many ways, like leaving a 2-year toxic relationship and making me realize one of them was domestic violence. That's amazing. Not the domestic violence, but that the podcast helped with that. You gave me the strength to rebuild myself and start to love myself and be unapologetically me. Enough of that. My question is that I'm in my last 6 months of uni. I'm feeling so lost and burnt out. This was my dream job I was working towards, which is cinematography and directing. But I can't help but feel a lack of inspiration or motivation to do anything. At this point, I feel like I'm just barely going through the motions just to finish. I don't do anything for myself other than the gym, which I love, or scroll on my phone. But I don't go out as I don't have any friends. I feel like a robot. I'm tired and bored and I don't know what to do. I feel lost, but I also know that once I finish uni, everything will be a lot better. But for the meantime, I feel like I'm drowning in phone addiction, boredom and burnout. Help. Okay, firstly, definitely go check out my Rat Park episode because this will really help you with feeling that you can like fill up your life with really meaningful and fulfilling things. But what I am going to say to you is at this point, you're right now telling yourself that you are in limbo. You are saying to yourself, until this happens, I'm not going to feel great. And then when this happens, it's going to feel a lot better. Don't kid yourself in thinking that finishing uni and having being able to start your career is going to be the magic pill that changes everything. If you're always scrolling on your phone and you're boredom and you're not, that's going to stay with you. So you want to actively put things into play now to start changing what's happening in the other times where you're not studying, when you're not at uni, when you're not doing that. Because that's really what our life experience is about. Our life experience is about all the little in-between moments, okay? Like what are we doing when we're not focusing on a task at work? What's our default mode network in our head? What are the stories or the narratives that we're telling ourselves? How much do we really enjoy our own company? Those are the things that are going to dictate our overall levels of happiness. So I want you to say to yourself, okay, what am I doing right now that is contributing to my levels of happiness? And the answer is not much. So then you can start to think, well, that's kind of good in a way because I've got a good platform to start from. If your answer is I'm not doing a lot, then that's actually not a bad thing. okay, because we've got a lot to work with then. I would start to think, okay, the fact that, you said you don't have many friends, you're just going through the motions. Okay, you enjoy the gym, that's great, keep that up. But then you got to think, what are other things that I can do for myself that's purely not attached to an outcome, not attached to having to succeed at something or finishing a degree or whatever, but something that's a hobby that really fills my cup up, something that I know that I really like, that maybe represents a little bit of growth so I can see some progress, but something that might seem quite mundane to other people. But when you do it, you're like, wow, I actually get a lot out of doing this thing. I actually really enjoy doing this activity or this thing. So that could be, like me, jigsaw puzzles, sewing. It could be you want to, it could be like a sport that you want to get good at. Why don't you join like a pickleball, whatever. You could join whatever it is, but an instrument, the guitar, anything that you're like, this would be of major interest. It will start to increase my levels of self-confidence and self-love because I see myself getting a little bit better here and there, but there's no crazy expectation on an outcome, because it's just like a bit of a journey that I'm going on. I get lost when I'm able to do this thing. So when I'm engaging in this activity or task, I get lost in it. I feel like I could do it forever. Then you start to feel really fulfilled. The pull to your phone gets diminished very, very quickly because you're actually feeling satisfied. The phone is addictive, but you never feel fulfilled after being on your phone. A hobby can feel addictive, but you feel fulfilled after doing the hobby. It's good for the soul, right? It's fulfilling. It feels like it's contributing in a positive way to your life, all right? So that's going to be the major difference there. So so please listen to the Rat Park episode because it does talk about addiction, but it even, it especially talks about phone addiction and things like that. And it talks about how you can really fill up your life with really meaningful things that make your overall level of life satisfaction so much higher. Okay, so go check out that episode. But I think that would be really, really helpful for you. And then I think when you start to feel a lot better and a lot more confident, then it's easier to then reach out and make friends, whether it be in this hobby that you're doing or whether it be not related to that hobby. All right, next question. Hi, Alexis. Thank you so much for all that you do on the podcast. I've been listening for a few years and the podcast has helped me get through some really difficult times in my life. Thank you. I was hoping you could do a podcast on learning about how to take initiative in relationships, in work and within yourself. I've struggled with being passive in my life and not being in the driver's seat for a very long time. And I let certain situations get to a breaking point before I change them. This is a really good question. I am tired of living this way and I would like to understand why I have allowed this to happen for so long. I have a history of anxiety and depression, not sure if it has anything to do with it. What steps could I take to start taking control? Okay, firstly, the anxiety and depression absolutely has a lot to do with it, 100%, 100%. Because anxiety makes you overthink things. Anxiety makes you approach things from a fear-based situation, then you become much more reactive than proactive. It makes you question yourself a lot. And also depression impacts your relationship with yourself and your self-esteem and, your confidence within yourself and taking action on things. So anxiety and depression are major players in this as well. So absolutely that is a contributing factor. Another thing that you said here was, you obviously feel like life is very passive. You feel like you're not in the driver's seat and that you let situations get to a breaking point before you change them. Now, that's a really, really good statement because I think a lot of us do that. A lot of us think when it gets bad enough, I'm going to walk away. When I reach my limit, I'm done. And we always have this idea that there's a version of ourselves that exists out there somewhere in the near future that will be strong enough to pull the pin on something or to take action on something or to get sick of something, to walk away from something, than we are right now. Because the thing is that doing that thing, making the change, walking away from something, reaching breaking point, it's hard. It's hard to do and it's hard to make a change. So that's why people wait till it catastrophically falls apart in front of them because then they really don't have an option. Because the actual act of walking away from something and making that call and that final call is really difficult and it requires really backing yourself and that confidence within your decision. So what I want you to start asking yourself is, and this is a question that you can apply at any stage of your life. You don't have to wait till it gets catastrophic, but what would it take for me to stay? And what would it take for me to leave? And you need to have tangible markers for either one. They have to be measurable things that occur or that don't occur by a timeline that will make you move ahead with this change. And then you got to know what would change look like if I was to leave or if I was to stay. So for example, let's say you are in a job that you are so unfulfilled with and you feel like you're just passively, literally time is just ticking on and you're feeling like you're not engaging in your life whatsoever and you're just a passenger. So what you could say is, what would it take for me to stay in this job and what would it take for me to leave this job? So you could say, normally you'd say, one day I'll get sick of it. And then if I get a good enough offer, I'll take that. So now you're looking at two random arbitrary things that you're hoping will happen, okay? The thing is that you underestimate how much you can put up with a shitty situation. You can put up with a shitty situation for a very long time. You shouldn't. Hopefully you don't. But you can. People do it for decades. There's people that are miserable with their lives and they've been miserable with their lives for fucking decades. And that could be you. Hopefully not, but it could be. So instead of looking at it as like, one day I'll get sick of it. People do this with relationships all the time. One day I'll snap. One day I'll be over his bullshit. No, can't. You'll be putting up with it for a very long time because you can put up with a lot of shit. You shouldn't have to, but you can. So what I want you to look at is, let's be very, very clear. Go back to the career example that I was beginning and then I fizzled off on. With the career, what would it take for me to stay? If in 3 months I don't love this job, I'm starting to legitimately go and interview for other jobs. I am done working in a career that I'm unsatisfied with. So what would it take for me to like this job? Well, I'm going to have to put in more effort. I'm going to have to pretend that it's a job that I like. And how would I act if I loved this job? How would I interact with my coworkers? How would I be less passive aggressive? Would I be more likely to put my hand up for things? If I were to pretend that this job was the be all end all, how would I act if I loved this job? So then I start pretending that I love this job. And then after, I've given myself a timeline, 3 months. After 3 months, if I'm like, you know what, that was exhausting and I fucking hate this job and I really tried, I gave it my all, I pretended it was my dream job, it really isn't, then you have nothing to regret. And that 3 month mark, bang, that's the marker, that's your measuring stick, that's when you start applying for new jobs, that's when you start interviewing for new jobs, okay? Or you could say, what would it take for me to leave? If you're in a relationship, you could give your partner an ultimatum, which I think is very healthy as long as I've got an episode on how to do healthy ultimatums. So go check, just look up ultimatum and the episode will come up. But if you give your partner a healthy ultimatum saying, if things don't change in our relationship like this, then this relationship can't last. It's not this I'm going to leave you every 2 days, but you got to sit your partner down and say, look, in order for us both to be satisfied in this relationship, this is what I need. What do you need? Can we meet each other in the middle? And if we can't, then what's the solution to that? We're going to have to both walk away, right? So there's little things like that. And then so you say, what would it take for me to leave? You need to put down the parameters of what it looks like, of what what needs need to be met. And then you put a timeline to that. 2 months, 3 months, 1 month, whatever that timeline is. And then you've got to be willing to walk away. So then once you have put that parameter in place, what would it take for me to stay? What would it take for me to leave? Then you got to look like, all right, once this thing has happened, what does leaving look like? You got to know. Because if you don't know, then you're like, I'll just push it another month. And before you know it, you're writing to me in 5 years' time being like, I've not changed anything in my life and I'm still dissatisfied. You have to know what it takes to be in the driver's seat in your life. And it takes uncomfortable decisions. It takes trusting yourself. And trusting yourself is not having all the data in front of you. It's not having all the answers in front of you. Because we think, I need to have all the answers in front of me in order for me to make this decision. But that's not trusting yourself, is it? Because trust requires a level of not knowing, but still following through with it because of that trust. If you had all the answers, you wouldn't need to trust yourself. And this is the problem. People don't trust themselves. So they wait until they have all the answers, which is in 15 years' time. And then they're like, well, now I have no option but to make this decision, okay? So in order to learn how to trust yourself, you need to start backing yourself. Start with small decisions and then make them bigger. What does it look like if I were to stay? What would it look like if I were to leave? And if I leave, how does leaving look like? How does it pan out? Start with small things and learn to follow through. And then you become more of a driver in your life. You realize that you have way more control than you give yourself credit for. So hopefully that helped. Next and last question. My partner thinks the world is ending and I'm sick of it. Great title. Hi, Alexis. Your podcast is my number one all-time favorite, and you inspire and help me to grow and expand as a human in this world, and I love it. You're a huge inspiration for me. Thank you. So my partner for 6 years now is a very anxious and worried human. He has a need to control everything in his life and ours and know how every little detail will turn out so he can do everything in his power to make it turn out the way he wants it to. The problem is that a lot of the things in this world that happen to you is things that you cannot have an impact on or predict. This is exactly what I talk about all the time. Spot on. I don't like stressing over things I can't change. Very good. That I can't change the outcome of. If it's possible to impact, I do what I can. So as to not worry. And if I can't impact the outcome, it's absolutely no point for me to worry about it. Perfect mindset. I love that. I try to be supportive and allow him to handle things the way he wants to. But after 6 years of him basically thinking the world is ending on a regular basis, my patience is getting lower when he has his moments. I try to tell myself the mantra of his worries are not my worries and his worries don't have to impact me kind of thing. But it's hard not to think it's difficult to stay in a positive mindset when he has his worried rants. How can I not let it impact my mood in a negative way? And in what way should I support him when I think he's insanely worried about nonsense things? Love, your bean. This is a really, really, really good question. And it's extremely frustrating because that mindset isn't helpful, obviously. My question, and maybe you have the answer to this and it's not something that I can get an answer from you, but does he want to change or does he enjoy this mindset? Like, does he find this mindset fulfilling? Does he ever think, I wish I didn't think this way. I wish I could be more free in the mind like you are. Does he think that the way you see things would be nice to be the same way? Does he, where is his head at, number one? Because that's going to be a really good indicator of how you can proceed. If he's like, I wish I didn't think this way, I'd love to be more carefree, then there's things that you can work on together. Just say, well, do you want me to help you with this, train of thought? Do you want to speak to someone else? Do you want to have tools to change? However, it sounds like that's not the case. And it sounds like he's very sure of needing this control. And that's the only way that he's going to be satisfied. It's the only way he's going to be happy and control. And if you're like, you know what, differences amongst us and everything, factoring in all the differences, factoring in how vastly different we see the world, how vastly different we approach things psychologically, I still want to be with him. Then you've got, if you've decided, no, this is not about being with him or not being with him. I'm going to be with him regardless, but how do I navigate it? Then you need to say to him, listen, we need to find a way that we can coexist in a way that doesn't cause the other person stress, okay? So what I require from you is if you want to keep living this way, you need to make it as personal as possible. Don't bring me into these things. When you try and control circumstances for you and external circumstances, there's nothing I can do about that, but you can't be controlling what I do. The same goes for when you go on your rants. If you're going to go on a rant, please do it with someone who actually wants to hear your rant, because I don't. Because when you go on a rant, you pull my mood down. You pull, I don't feel good after you've gone on a rant. And it helps no one. It doesn't help you, and it definitely doesn't help me, and therefore it doesn't help our relationship. It's not a helpful rant. And if you really care, you don't have to understand it, but you do have to respect it. And if you care about me as your partner, you wouldn't want to be making me feel anxious. The last thing a loving partner would want to do is to try and get their partner to feel anxious. So if you are going to go on the rant, find someone who aligns with you and you can talk shit for the next hour together, or go on a rant on your own time to yourself. But I'm done listening to these rants. I'm not interested. I don't have to be a part of them. And see how he reacts to that. Because that's a very, 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 very fair point to make. You can say that to your partner, because the alternative is you burning out anyway and leaving him being like, I'm so sick of your shit, I can't handle it. I cannot handle it. And it's only going to get worse. I can tell you right now, it is going to get worse, because people rile themselves up and then they start to think like thoughts, and like thoughts attract like thoughts. And that's why, those people that start off, I'm not saying your boyfriend is this at all, but as an example, those people that start off like a little conspiracy here, a little conspiracy theory there. And then before you know it, they're like full blown, like you meet up with them 2 years later and they're like, you can't fucking switch on a light and you can't fucking, and you're like, oh my God, this has escalated to a crazy degree. It's because they start finding thoughts that attract similar style thoughts, and their thinking style continues to evolve down that path. So his thinking style is going to continue to evolve down that anxious, spiraling path. And it's your decision if you want to go along for the ride or not. And if you want to stay in this relationship, then he's got to find a way to like nip it in the bud, at least when it comes to engaging with you about these certain things. Just say, I want to hear about your general concerns about other things in life, but when you start to spiral, I'm going to let you know that you're spiraling and that I'm not interested in listening to it, because that's not how my mind operates, nor do I want my mind to operate in that way, okay? And if he does want to change, then there's certain things that you can work on together, and I would definitely recommend like even just going to a therapist a couple of times just to get a hold on like what are good pivoting thoughts that he can start to think about. But yeah, that would be extremely infuriating, and it's not something that you need to put up with. You should not have to put up with that thing. It's just not fair. Guys, thank you so much for writing in with your head noise questions. That was a great episode. All your head noise episodes, all your head noise questions are amazing. If you do want to send in a question, you can email info@dyfmpod.com, or you can send a voice message into the website dyfmpod.com. Love you guys so much. As always, remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to your brain. Don't take shit from anyone, and especially don't take shit from yourself. Danke.